Hello, bonsai friends. This is Evan Pardue of Underhill Bonsai, and welcome to episode 24 of Little Things for Bonsai People podcast, formerly Bonsai Southeast. And mentioning formerly Bonsai Southeast, we're going to bring back one of the older hosts or one of the OG hosts from when we first started the show, Nate Murray. What's going on today, mate?
Hey Evan, how you doing today, buddy?
Pretty good, pretty good. Glad to have you back. It's been a good while since we chatted.
Most definitely, man. It's good to be back.
Yep. We're going to catch up a little bit, see what's been going on in the world of Nate Murray. But before we get there, I need to mention a few things. Our podcast is sponsored by our amazing patrons over off of patreon.com/little things for bonsai people. You can sign up and become a $5 patron to be a bonsai best bud. Our current bonsai best buds are Tori Solis, Warehouse Rat, Boyd Snellgrove. I mess up these names all the time. Ricky Ruins, Joshua Bentley, Snappy Chappers, Ryan Gliarandan, this guy's name, Gliarandando. Damn, I got really hooked up on that one this time. Joel Jenkins.
Everyone's laughing at you, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, that's one of the whole things about this whole podcast now is how much I butcher people's names. It's amazing. Justin Knights, Backyard Bonsai Australia, and our newest bonsai best bud, the ladies at the flower market. Love the name. That's awesome. That's going to be really fun to say every episode. Thank you guys so much for being a bonsai best bud and supporting our show. Every little bit counts. And happy birthday to everybody whose birthday is today. If you'd like to support our show in other ways, Instagram, Facebook, got Underhill Bonsai. You can follow me on there. On our website, underhillbonsai.com. I've got articles that I've written and experiences that I've had in bonsai. You can go visit there. We've got an online store. I'm going to try to keep it up to date. Spring's been really busy, but might put a few things on there soon. For Nate Murray, since we haven't really talked about anything to like go check out Nate's in a while, Nate has since started the Boot Bonsai, which is his own little side project that he features his collected Yamadori bald cypress. He's got some really awesome content on there, progressions of his trees, and him out in the swamps digging some good stuff. So go check out the Boot Bonsai on Instagram. Is there something else that they can check out for you, Nate?
No, we're just on socials on Facebook, but I kind of lean more towards Instagram more than Facebook. There seems to be more action there.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. So yeah, definitely check him out. And then for Carmen, of course, go check out the Women's Purple Pot Society. The Purple Pot Society, the Women's National Bonsai Club at purplepotsociety.org. And then for Mike, go check him out on ketsunebonsai.com. Go check out Ketsune Bonsai on Instagram and Facebook. Great information there as well. And then also special thanks to our editor, Matt O'Donnell, bass player and music producer out of Nashville, Tennessee. He edits our podcast, makes us sound clean, makes us sound smart. Everything about editing is pretty overwhelming to me personally, but if you want Matt to take over and help you edit your podcast or even produce some music that you might have, some good jams, that is part of his job, that is his world, go over to Matt O'Donnell on Instagram or mattodonnell.com and go to his contact form on his website. But if listening today is all you can do, then that's more than enough. We thank you guys so much for listening. Just make sure you subscribe and follow on your favorite listening platform. I always get tongue-tied when I'm trying to get through this opening, but I think I got it pretty good that time around. But what's going on, Nate? What has been going on in your world of bonsai, my dude?
Oh, world of bonsai. I don't know if I can say bonsai without baseball and soccer. Just daddying it right now, you know. I didn't repot many trees this spring.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of them were repotted last year, so giving them an additional year. Some of the work that we've done on some of my pieces, I've really just tried to refine and ramify some of those. So didn't do much repotting, not as busy as a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And repotting as far as just mostly your bald cypress stock and stuff that you've been dealing with?
Yeah. Had had a couple air layers. Had Wanderer, had the wing down that was an air layer grown from seed and air layered it, I guess, last year,
Hmm.
and put it back in some new soil. Just kind of cleaned it up a little bit. It's really healthy, really pushing well.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm glad that you. I remember being over there last time and seeing that tree. I'm glad you air layered it because you can make
Yeah,
much better use of that movement higher up.
right.
One of our things that we visited earlier on another episode was talking about taking an air layer and the best time to take one. And yeah, seeing the success on like even an air layer that big. How big of an air layer would you say that was as far as the trunk diameter on that?
Yeah, probably inch and a half across.
Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty good size for an elm tree. I mean, I've seen them big, but I mean, for your purposes, it was, it was pretty good. And then I think, don't you have something on your Instagram like of you air layering that tree?
I do, yes.
And where can the listeners go and check that out? What date is that? Do you remember?
Roughly around this time of the year, it was right after CS Bonsai.
Okay.
After talking with Sergio and we worked on it, that's really one of the primary trees we worked on. And
Mhm.
then as we just kind of talked, and that tree moving forward, the only way for the quality of it to be, improved, the lack of
Mhm.
taper, um, lack of nabari and whatnot, it was necessity to air layer it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was roughly, I'd have to look. It was roughly mid-March, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to revisit that and continue to work on that. That's a tree that I actually got from Guy Guidry back in the day. It was very interesting. But I mean, that's just how bonsai is. The evolution has to keep moving forward on these trees, you know.
Right.
Um,
I think that's, for me, one of the things, Evan, that we've talked about often is how this practice has pushed me to make a decision, to make it my own. And once you decide to do something, to move forward with it, obviously to take the precautions and, make quality decisions, not irrational decisions, but to make decisions based on, based on the information you've been given.
mhm. And I guess in a way, this talking to you on the podcast now is kind of a good way to go back and get a retrospect on how you feel now, like where you started with bonsai and where
Yeah.
you're at now. What have you experienced and how's that changed?
I think a lot of it early on, and I've kind of messed with you about the fact I didn't want to just be known as the guy that could collect really nice trees, really nice cypress. Um, I think I just had to get my, no pun intended, but needed to get my feet wet and actually develop, actually develop some trees. And that just comes through experience. Um,
Hmm.
there's a difference in collecting, having the tree thrive for a year or so, and then doing the initial work, and then to attempt to build the ramification from that. I mean, I think that's really from start, not necessarily to finish, but to attack things from the starting point, there out. I think that's the allure for a lot of people is with the Amadori is I've done everything from the start with trees.
Yeah, your real glass roots or grassroots. I'm not
Right.
sure what the actual terminal the slang on that was, but real from the ground up type
Right.
bonsai guy. Where I mean, you just wanted to go dig cypresses and just make it
Yeah.
your vocation in bonsai to be a bald cypress collector at the same time, you
Right.
know.
And having four children at the house, them going through some pubescent stages and a couple 8-year-olds and how they change. And, I was thinking prior to getting on with you, I really feel like in my enclosure where my trees are, I've got some adolescent children. You don't have to overlook them as much as you would, maybe an early collected piece. There's a lot more work that you can do with them. If you do the work right early on, and I think it mirrors what we do as parents. if you do the work early,
Mm,
it sets you up better for later. But yeah, none of my trees I feel like are at a place where they're anywhere close to being show worthy.
mm,
Uh, but I feel the bones of a lot of them are there.
yeah.
So again, that awkward stage of a preteen kind of feel like that's where a lot of my trees are. And it's crazy too, because a few buddies that I have is they'll come out if it's been a year or so since they've been to the house, the trees look completely different from being a stump to, an actual miniature version of what we see in the swamp.
Hmm. Yeah, but a lot of for the listeners to kind of fill in on what your collection is, it's a lot of bald cypress,
Correct. Yeah.
and a couple of other things in between that have piqued your interest.
Yeah.
So, and what other just to kind of kind of get them in there? What other species have you collected?
Few American hornbeam. I haven't quite hit my stride with height to chop those and, um, kind of trenching those the year prior or chopping them back the year prior to promote some good back budding. But I, the one that I do have that has some pretty nice movement. It's the second year out the ground and it's cooperating. I've got another that had really just irregular movement and it's doing its own thing. It's budding from one spot.
Hmm.
So hornbeam, I've collected a few river birch, paper bark birch. Really, aside from that, where I go, there's not many winged elm. A buddy of mine, Casey, recently came across on his property some winged elm and some beech that I'm excited about.
Hmm.
He's chopped those back and has mentioned, us, collecting those in the near future, next year or so.
Yeah.
I tell you, some of the things you ask what I've been doing, some of the things, trees that have the capability to be chopped back and to form, more of a show hen type. Some of the gardenia, two of the gardenia, what is it, gardenia radicans,
Yeah.
the from the nursery, just nursery stock, but it was wonderful material to be able to hopefully cut those back into a nice line.
Hmm.
Um, I've yet to pot those. I did see a post that Roy had put out, and I
Uh,
snatched one of his really nice pots that
Roy, who?
I think it's Minari.
Yeah.
They're on the East Coast. Just a really beautiful aquish glaze that he
Hmm.
kind of, I feel like he's known for.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, and as far as your collecting of cypress, you say you guys are chopping some trees down early. Are you doing that with some bald cypresses too? Have you found yourself going out and prepping them, chopping them, trenching them, anything like that?
I haven't felt the need to do that with
Hmm.
cypress. I feel they're vigorous enough once you collect them in the traditional way.
Hmm. I'm just wondering because since I've collected with you, I don't know if you've tried anything else out that's a little bit different because we missed the collecting season this year.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well, I did. If you had seen out back behind my shop, I did. I collected probably 8 or 10 smaller, probably 2.5 inch diameter, some even smaller than that, with some interest. And to put those, I put them on just some rough cut 1x12s, just to kind of
mhm,
plate them. And they're not necessarily in the ground, but I put topsoil and going to let those sit for a couple of years.
yeah.
So that, if anything, that's my one experiment that I'm messing with. And I know in the past, one of the things that a comment that you had made, and you can kind of enlighten us. One of the things that you had mentioned, you wanted at least one tree of each species.
As far as the natives,
Whether it be natives, where do you sit with that? Do you still, because for me, obviously, I want to lean more towards something that I'm familiar with, and I guess
mhm,
that's just my comfort level. I know the few tropicals that I've had, they haven't done well due to the lack of a greenhouse and
Mm.
structure. What about for you? I mean, when we talk about species and variety of species, you still kind of have that mindset?
Uh, yeah, I've leaned into the natives a good bit. I think I have my preferred native species list kind of down at this point.
Mm,
Bald cypress is obviously on the top of the list. The trees that we dug, and I think there might be pictures earlier on my Instagram where it
mm,
shows our collecting trip where we pulled those trees out and then we took the mud and we put the mud under your eyes, look like a dirt like you got your prize kill. That tree that you're holding, I've actually got that tree down path. It's going to be a very beautiful formal upright tree.
mm,
And there's a couple of trees. There's this big tree I'm gonna have to drop uh into the Instagram once it gets kind of a little bit more leafed out. Pretty sure you collected it. It's a big, lean, crazy monster of a tree.
mm.
But I do want to say that about 90% of the collected trees at the nursery are all your stuff too. So I'm pretty sure you did. But yeah, as far as the trees that the bald cypresses that I have, feeling really great about. So yeah,
Yeah.
the winged elms for sure. We've been growing cedar elms at the nursery,
Mm,
and those cedar elms are like right at that point where they're just near perfect to collect and make some really cool stuff out of them. So I've got one pulled to the side, just making a kind of a more of a wild broom, naturalistic, deciduous looking kind of thing out of it. It should be pretty fun. I posted that on my Facebook not too long ago. And then of course the Yopon hollies. I mean, I'm
yeah.
always looking for a new Yopon Schillings dwarf Yopon
Yeah.
uh venture to be in. I dug one out of the front garden of my house that I just purchased a year ago. Been in my house for over a year now. It's kind of crazy, but there's these big honking dwarf. I mean, they're dwarf Yopons, but they are not dwarf. They are huge. And so Kate was like, I want to get rid of these bushes. And I was like, yeah. So I dug up one of those that had a really great base. I introduced a sweet gum, and I had another sweet gum in my collection that I ended up parting ways with. But try my way with the sweet gum, the American sweet gum. I can't remember the exact nomenclature on the one that's truly native
Mm.
to us, but it's the one that makes the little spiky balls for our our listeners. For our
They need
listeners
to
out
be
there,
doing your backdrop right now.
yeah. I got my goofy swamp background on our Zoom meeting, but eventually the podcast will get its own YouTube thing. Once I find a video editor, hopefully we can get that down one day in the future. But yeah, sweet gums, the ones that make the spiky little seed balls, those are really fun. That's one of those challenging trees where you go from really, really big, like leaf the size of literally the size of your face, down to a trident maple size leaf. You can get really, really well into the leaf reduction on those trees. And my trees are right outside my back window. You can't see it, but yeah, I'm trying to think of. I mean, I've gotten into some other stuff like sea grapes and
Yeah.
sea hibiscus and buttonwoods. I love
Yeah.
those. Those are pretty awesome, strong tropicals. The not the sea hibiscus, but the buttonwood's a little bit of a challenge
Mm,
because of just how temperature sensitive that plant is.
mm,
But believe it or not, I've been kind of looking around at different things. I've got some Japanese black pine that I've been developing. It's
yeah.
those are a lot of fun. I can kind of show you how to make them work in Southeast Louisiana. I know for some
Right.
people that are listening, they're like, "Oh, Japanese black pine, that does really good in my range." Depending on if you're like
Mm,
in a slightly cooler range, Louisiana, they do grow well, and they're one of the few species that do well here because it's actually a coastal Japanese pine. It comes from the coastal areas of Japan, and it can put up with heat, and it can put up with short winter periods and stuff. And then, yeah, I've been getting some other trees like trident maples are looking really enticing because some of the field grown stock that we have are starting to really
mm,
get beefy. So those trees are becoming really fun. I've got a trident maple or two that I'm introducing. So yeah, I'm starting to break away from the pure natives mindset a little bit, but at the same time, I'm like in this preferred species area where trees that do really well for us, but I'm also
Mhm.
looking to get a little bit of, a little bit of mastery behind some of the stuff that we can do here in
Well, and
Louisiana with them.
that's what I was wanting to ask you. To have one of each species, is that just a feather in your cap, or is it? Do you want to lean more towards like, you know, nicer trees as you cycle certain trees out of your collection? Because
Hmm.
as big as your backyard is at this point with the new house,
Hmm.
do you feel like you're cycling out trees that aren't as good caliber wise, or?
Well, Doug put it good in a good way. Doug Green, the the creator of Underhill Bonsai, he put it a good way, saying there's always going to be another tree, and I
Right.
agree with that. There's going to be another tree that wows me, another tree that I could develop, and I'd be like, man, this would be fun to wire this tree out, spend some time with it.
Mhm.
Uh, but there are trees that I have had for a very long time that I'll never part ways with,
Mhm.
just from nostalgia or where it came from.
Right.
And but you've known me. I run a bonsai nursery, so I have to sell things
Mhm.
at certain times. So yeah, it's not that I'm cycling trees out because there's a better tree, but um, but I'm cycling things out because I have one of these, but I have this one, and then I'm like,
Mhm.
and I always kind of like to break down a tier list of which trees are are the best trees that I would love to continue to spend more time with, and maybe even the rest of my life with, versus, could somebody else enjoy this tree better?
Yeah.
I'm more in a giving mood, uh,
Yeah.
more than often when it comes to these trees, because I'd rather have somebody enjoy it, especially somebody who's really serious and wants to get into it.
Mhm.
Um, and then another way to look at it too is I'm not trying to get one of each species that I can get, because if I was trying to do that, then I would have like a climate control greenhouse and like
Mhm.
a way to like sub-zero optimize. Like we talk about this in other episodes previously, but like alpine species like one seed
Mhm.
junipers and Rocky
Yeah.
Mountain junipers, ponderosa pines. I've experienced in mountain hemlocks. I've experienced those up in the Pacific Northwest, and they're beautiful plants. And if I really wanted to make it work, it would be like jumping through some hoops in Southeast Louisiana with, like 100 degrees and barely below 20-degree nights that those trees really like. I mean,
Yeah.
but I'm not looking for to fill my backyard with a variety of species at this point. It's trees that really intrigue me that I know I can work with. Back to how you mentioned like being familiar with the species, being
Mhm.
familiar with something will work for you, and that
Mhm.
you can do techniques that you have tried and true before. So yeah, my approach is much more different than from when you remember we first spoke about these
Mhm.
topics, even earlier on the podcast that we started.
Well, when you go up and see Hagedorn, when you hang with Carmen, when you talk with Mike, does your background with swamp trees, with cypress, with native trees here, do you feel it impacts you and encourages you to see those trees slightly different? What do you think impacts you more? What you see in those trees in the Pacific Northwest, like you mentioned, hemlock and some other alpine species that they may have some better experience and luck with up there. Do you feel it affects when you come home, or vice versa when you go up?
I just
Can
keep
you?
bringing the swamp with me.
Right, you can't take it
um,
out, bro.
yeah, you can't remove the swamp from the Bayou boy.
Are
No,
you able to compartmentalize? You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I definitely have seen more in my bald cypress flat top designs, because there's a lot of stuff that Hagedorn has done with slender, long,
Mhm.
literati-esque
Mhm.
styling that I just don't see anywhere else. And I'm like, what if I leaned
Yeah,
into that with these flat tops? What
yeah.
if the simplicity that I was looking for in a flat top cypress was more literati in
Hmm.
form?
Yeah.
And I mean, it just kind of brings us back to the basics again. Less is more kind of
Mhm.
principles. Um, simpler lines, elegant trees. Look at the base, look at the movement. Because I've heard from Hagedorn, from Michael himself, that he's like, why would I want to work with this tree if it doesn't have something that moves me to initially to think, what would I do with this? And that really helps me kind of look at trees differently now, because I mean, then this is a lot of people, when we get into bonsai, we just want to work with trees. So any tree will do, any nursery plant will do, so it evolves every time, and I feel like it evolves every year. So I mean, we're still young in this bonsai
Right.
game, in the American bonsai world. I talked with Jennifer Price on the previous episode that'll be out before this, about where we're at in bonsai America right now, and it's awesome, to witness
Yeah.
all this.
Do you feel that's influenced more by older folk that have been in it for a long time, or up and coming, more recent generation?
With the older folk, especially in the New Orleans clubs, I like to go back and refer to what they've done before me, because it was working.
Right.
Like,
Especially New Orleans bald cypress, for sure.
oh yeah, like I can't not reference back to where flat top came from
Right.
Von Banting to Guy Guidry to Randy Bennett to the present. Like, I can't forget that line. And Gary Marsal, that people
Yeah.
don't really think about very often, with his
Even Bill
collecting
putting
of big
content out.
giant trees. Yeah, and Bill Butler. Go over to Bill's Bayou on YouTube. Check out Bill Butler. That guy has done some really innovative things with bald cypresses and flat top form. And I wanted to bring up your experience with John Ginger Angel.
Yeah.
When you went up to North Carolina to go visit him, and you went to go collect with him, and you said that was a pretty eye-opening experience.
Yeah. So John's a really, first off, when you look at his content out on YouTube, he is that guy. He's the guy. He's the buddy. Just a great human being. Allowed me to bunk up at his place for a couple nights. We went collecting at one of his spots. I'll say I hope I can do it as long as he has, because man, he is a trooper. When you see some of the pictures of him collecting, and the conditions, and he's got a couple guys that go out with him and do a really good job. And some of his trees are just so ramified, and his style, I think, is unique. More so probably cypress than anybody in the States. Well, anybody anywhere. Really keeps some tight structure.
I like
really tall,
John's.
slender.
That's one of the things I was going to point out, is I like John's really, really tight, long, slender line trees, that when you see just that line, it gives such a minimalistic feel to it.
Yeah.
You're really able to appreciate the negative spaces between those trees. Like I saw a forest planting he did with these, just they're just surrealistically tall feeling, far away trees. And
he's constantly putting out forest slab plantings that are just gorgeous. His understanding of the natural world, and how it occurs. I mean, he collects those slabs. Frank McDermott, I believe, is one of the guys he goes out with, or that goes out with him. And man, he's an artist. His space and his back patio is just gorgeous. It really is. But just a great guy, bottom line, just a great guy.
I'd like to take another trip to the North Carolina, the Arboretum up there with the Arthur Joers collection, and then try to see if I can find a time to do a thing with John like that. Go visit his garden and kind of talk with him. I mean, I've only seen videos, but for the listeners out there, I believe most of his content and stuff, like, I follow him on Facebook, and he's got just about every day he kind of plugs away at posting pictures of his bonsai creations.
Yeah.
So it's John. How do you spell his last name? Because he's got a long, weird last name.
So it's Gean. So Gean and then Angel, Angel.
Yeah. Um,
So G and Angel.
Gene Angel. I say Jenner Angel. I put an R in there, but that's
I
me.
don't I don't feel the need to correct you.
Yeah,
But
because
look,
yeah.
dude, I just, I don't know. I feel even off to say I would love to be considered cut from the same cloth he's from, but he's an educator, he's a teacher as well. So
Mhm.
we kind of connect on that level.
Yeah.
So,
For the listeners who are not familiar or haven't heard Nate's voice in a while, you're kind of tell everybody what you do as far as your regular job, as far as
so
teaching.
my my
Yeah.
regular job,
Yeah,
I'm
your bread and butter.
what I actually make money from
Mhm.
is so I'm a public school teacher. I teach a class called JAG. It's a federal course, Jobs for America's Graduates. Um, Mock interviews, conflict resolution, just interpersonal skills. Um, my kids actually, I'm bringing two groups to Orlando. They won at the state level, one at the Louisiana level, and the week after spring break, I am following them to Orlando to compete nationally. It's like a Shark Tank pitch. They did a
Mhm.
ripping lips fishing baits from. It's a really cool thing to see high school kids think of things like young business, young entrepreneurs. It's really cool. So that's what I get to spend my time each day, 8 to 3, I guess, messing with snotty nosed teenagers, attitudes. I do have some great kids, though. I do. I enjoy it. They hate hearing me talk about trees and relating it to trees,
Oh yeah,
relating those lesson examples to trees. I'll tell you.
bring everything back around to the bonsai, man.
That's right.
But yeah, and yeah, mention like we don't go into bonsai to make a living off of this. We're coming into this to spread the information and all the joy of
Yeah.
bonsai, man. That's the best way to look at that, you know.
Well,
uh,
to touch on it, when I say some of the older people versus some of the younger people, there is such a sharing of information that's really cool to be a part of because I even prior to hopping on, when I went to the Pacific Bonsai Expo um, out there in San Francisco, just man, to meet people and connect, especially people who do kind of similar collecting trees. Um, Talking with a guy who works with Dan Robinson closely, Anthony, and
Yeah, I remember meeting him.
man, just this past week, he's like, "You figured out which tree you're gonna Dan?" And I'm like, "Man, I ain't got none of them that are gnarly quite like that."
hmm Yeah, just take a tree and just take the power bit to it, like the carving
Right.
tools, and just go to town and then wire the
Yeah.
branches all out and give it
Yeah.
that good old Dan Robinson feel to it. Yeah. Uh, Dan's approach to bald cypress is otherworldly as well. Lots of crazy stuff going on with his trees.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to go out to is it a Layton Gardens, I believe is the name of his place? It's
I
out
think it's Ellengrad.
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 It's
He's in
something.
Washington State, I believe.
I went
I'm
out
gonna
to
make a
it.
trip up there. I
Yeah, I
know
went
you
out
went
to it
to it when
last
you went up that
time.
way.
He's on the Pacific Northwest in the Olympic Peninsula. Yeah, he's got I mean, all the trees you see listed online and in his book that he's got, gnarly branches, gnarly trees, I
Mhm.
believe. Yeah, all that stuff in person, that stuff's wild to see. His approach is wild. His trees are literally wild. Uh,
Right.
but yeah,
He's wild.
yeah, he's a wild dude. But yeah, the it's cool to hear about the show over in is Oakland, California with that
Yeah.
show. I was really hoping to go to that, but I had already flown out to Portland like not too long before that, and we're kind of exhausted on resources getting me to go places like that and not be at the nursery and be able to work. Um, so I mean, I can go learn bonsai, but eventually I got to go work on some trees, you know.
Well, I think you failed to mention the main thing that kept you from going. I think you put a ring on your finger and a ring on Kate's finger.
Oh yeah, that had happened around that time as well. Yeah, we had gotten
Kind of
engaged,
an
and
important thing.
a year later, what do you know? We had scheduled our wedding to happen around that time. So yeah,
Right,
it was there was a lot of stuff going on around that time, for
right.
sure. But yeah, I heard that you and then one of our Bonsai best buds, Joel
Yep.
Jenkins, yeah, he was out there hanging out as well.
Yeah.
Um,
So I came up on a booth in the corner of this shipyard, which was gorgeous, by the way. The lighting at certain times was a little bit troublesome, but it was so unique. It was different. Um,
hmm,
but in the corner there were, and you and I have kind of touched on this too, but a booth that had grapes. And
yep.
Joel was back there, and as I approached the corner, out he turns around, and just to be across country and see a guy who's from about an hour from where we are, it was the craziest thing.
Yeah. I mean, you guys are both there for Bonsai, and y'all are both like, wow, who'd have known I'd seen you here at
Right.
one of the newest cutting edge bonsai shows over here. And it's yeah, like it is a small world. Keep that in mind. Like if you go to a show and it draws a big crowd, you're probably gonna see those same people at the next show if it's across the country. Like we keep talking about ABS coming up in Denver.
Mhm.
I would love to get to that show and see a lot of the same people I saw at Nationals, and you probably saw
Yeah.
over at the Pacific Expo.
Yep.
But yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to an towards the start getting towards the later segments of the show. I
Okay.
sent over a picture to you to look at. It's a
Mhm.
flat top bald cypress styling.
Yep.
It was done by one of our listeners.
Hmm.
Apparently, I had credited a metasequoia uh, that he had done to another listener on accident, but I'm going to use the name that I got from Discord because that's what I know. And there's a Joshua Bentley, and then there's a Boneside Bentley on this Discord feed. But he submitted this really beautiful bald cypress that I think he's done
Hmm.
some great work to. And
Yeah.
I figured, what a perfect tree to sit down and kind of look at with Nate and get both of our opinions on this, since this is kind of our forte here.
Yeah.
So I
It,
this
if I could add, I follow him. We follow each other and we go back and forth often. I've yet to meet, like you say, Bonsai Bentley,
Oh,
but
so
this
you're
tree,
familiar with him. Okay.
right? I think this tree is from Bonsai Bentley, and it's one of John's, a collected piece from G and Angel.
Oh, excellent. This is right up this is perfect for this episode. We couldn't ask for a better
Yeah.
tree to look at. Before we get too far, for the listeners out there, if you go over to Instagram, you go to Little Things for Bonsai People, it's going to be on our feed. It's going to be under the description. It'll tell you guys which episode it links up to. It'll be linked up to episode 24. We had a critique from an earlier episode that was one of the other trees that was done by the same person. But yeah,
Mhm.
so initially looking at this tree, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? How's it making you feel?
Swampy.
Yeah.
No, I mean, such a muscular and masculine base. You got slight movement almost halfway up, back to your left. I do feel like, and again, this is the early development of a tree like this to leave so many branches, but, to not even mention bar branches, that's not my point. But to me, I feel there's too many branches specifically towards the top. Um,
Okay.
you know, as you build, to me, again, if it were my tree, and again, to build ramification, you got to keep in mind how wide you want to play this thing, how wide you want to play this flat top there towards the apex, and to keep having to cut back. Obviously, maybe he's letting it elongate for growth. I'm guessing this is a late winter picture.
I believe this picture he sent me a before and an after, and I believe this is a picture of it like probably not too long ago,
Yeah.
because before it shows it dormant, so it probably is late
Yep.
winter, right before bud pop.
Yep. I do love with a lot of them, just subtle movement. That's already been established. I do really like on the left-hand side, there is a branch that, that comes down and then out, which I think is a really natural look. I think that's a beautiful branch for this tree. But I do think there's a few too many, it's too busy at the top. I feel like it takes away from a little
Mhm.
bit from the buttressing. If he doesn't have much to play with, much to go off of with the base, then yeah, let's stay up top. Let's really accentuate that. I would like to see. I'd like to see that a little less congested up top myself, personally. What's your take on it?
Um, so whenever I'm judging the height and ratios for flat top bald cypress styling, I've always talked about how it's just like if you were to fold this tree in half
Hmm.
and make that reverse triangle shape that comes up off the top into the flat top, you should
Yeah.
end up with a more of a properly proportioned bonsai, like as far as
Hmm.
your, I think, David DeGrout's good proportion was, I think it was 22-1 in some instances for like really tall, slender trees, and then it knocks down to like 12-1. It really depends. And there's different proportions that are suited for certain species, for certain trees. This one, the base is really broad, and so there is an argument that, let's see, it's roughly about 8-10 ratio, which is actually pretty nice. It's it's got the base, which really supports a top that is it's kind of like the top is just far enough away that it gives you almost like this reflection feel. Like it's almost
Hmm.
as like if you drew a line in this tree, it would be a reflection of itself on the water
Right.
below,
Yep.
which is great. And I love that feeling that you can get in some flat top cypresses. And I think this is that. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with what Bonsai Bentley's done here is I think he's got the proportions of the flat top just about perfect. Like this is where I would love to see the height of this tree. There is an argument that this tree could have been chopped all the way down to that little tiny branch that comes off to the side and then like made into more of a really lean, really big feeling, kind of like a Henderson swamp, a Chaffalaya basin kind of bald cypress.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the top there, like you mentioned, that branch that drops down, that's very lovely. But there's a branch directly across from it that carries a line straight through the tree that is very bar branch, and I would
Mhm.
remove that branch.
Yeah.
Um, I I usually would carve out where the branches come out of the
Right.
top and give it some kind of
Right.
indentation or some kind of U shape or some kind of
Taper.
nice
Yep.
tapering into those top branches. But in this case, this feels a little bit more natural to let it have that break off at the top. And it is a tree that was collected by John. If that's the correct information, John would style the tree in this manner, which is
Hmm.
very in line. But yeah, I do agree with the busyness at top. There should be, let's see, just to kind of name off a few branches that I would personally remove. So that beautiful dropping branch to the left, that
Hmm.
branch above it, that's coarse and
Yep.
bigger, I would do away with that. The branch that's directly across the one that descends is beautiful, but you can't have
Yep.
both. It's in one or the
Right.
other. And then you have the branches like right above that where you have a branch that comes up and then one that kind of goes back. I don't
Yep.
mind those, but there's a branch that looks like there's something that comes straight towards the viewer. I would
Hmm.
take that out and then leave some of the back branching and then that one that comes up.
Yep.
Um, yeah, just cleaning it up that little bit. And there's something to be said about the branches that do occur up and down the trunk.
Hmm.
Um, Bald cypresses will, and they do this in nature where they'll just grow and fill in a crazy amount of branches right underneath that canopy, but there would be even less so than this. Um, and I would keep
Yeah.
the
I think
movement
he's
in
going to
one
lose.
direction.
I think he's going to lose a few of those lower branches because it's going to possibly get shaded out by
Yeah,
how
it's
thick it
naturally
is.
going to shade out.
Yeah.
Um, and I would probably do. I treat those lower branches on a flat top bald cypress almost like a break in the canopy in the top part of a really heavy canopy bonsai, just general overall design.
Mm,
So you could have those branches down there, but make sure there's breaks in there because this is an ancient tree. There's
mm.
trees on the sides of it that are blocking the way for those branches to occur. I'm not sure what's going on with these lines that droop downwards. I'm not sure what that is. It looks like branches that were left on that just kind of droop on the tree.
Maybe he wasn't going to include them. Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is. It might be pieces of wire, but those are kind of interesting if they were branches, but at the same time, it doesn't match anything else, but it's probably not relevant. I really love this little tiny branch formation towards the bottom right. I'm digging
Hmm.
that. I try to encourage people to leave little elements like this because when you're in a canoe or a kayak or even just your flatbed boat, whatever you might be choosing to scoot around in the swamp in, and you come
Hmm.
up towards a big tree like this, you will see those branches, the bottom, that really sets the height for this tree. Um, and if you didn't have so many branches from that up in between to the top of our canopy, this tree would feel even taller. So yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I don't want to pick it apart because I know, and I think someday it'll probably happen where I meet
yeah.
Bonsai Bentley. We've gone back and forth,
You don't
but
want to say something about his tree and then you'll see him in
I don't
person and be
know.
like, now what?
No, but to feel like I'm in his head. I do feel like this tree is early in development. I feel
Mhm.
like it's he's kept it leggy to build the girth.
Yeah.
You remove some of the top portion, you know, top branches. The one thing I would do towards the top, aside from removing, and we've talked about that, to angle the tips up to realize I'm only going to keep 3, 4, 5 inches at most of those branches, realizing they're going to be chopped back and to angle them up and they're going to take off. Like
Mhm.
to the movement of the early stages here, I feel like you're going to have to get a bud that shoots up, or I just don't feel these branches towards apex are going to grow nearly as vigorous. Number one, because there's so many. Number two, because they're not pointing towards the sun itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would
There's
angle those up.
there's going to be a point where you're going to want to grow the branches back into the other direction to kind of fill in the
Yeah,
top.
yeah.
Now, something to be said about this tree, though, in an honest opinion, is that when you look at this tree first glance, I see it. I see
Oh, 100%.
very good, a very good flat top. And flat top
Yeah,
still like we're still teasing out the opinions and take the hot takes from other
yeah.
bonsai practitioners and professionals on this style. So I think this is a great step. This is a good step in a great direction for this species.
I
Um,
think what's scary for a lot of people with flat tops is there are no rules. It's like, oh, it's supposed to do this. No, well, I think it should do. Well, it grows like this here. Well, like this here. Like it's different portions of the country.
yep.
And maybe in South Carolina, I'm not sure if Bonsai Bentley, if he's somewhere on the East Coast. I think he's
I'll
uh
have to ask him for better
yeah,
reference.
yeah,
I do need to say one more thing, and then we'll wrap up the critique. Is that the drip line and the narrowness of the flat top should come in a little bit more, in my opinion, um, because it's a little wide on the right side. I would bring those guys in, and I would like to challenge uh, Bonsai Bentley, take those branches off and leave that one long branch, that one long piece of the canopy going to the left side, and really throw the movement in that tree. So because you have that slight curve in the trunk, I think that
yeah,
would be gorgeous. And that's me. That's me. And then maybe you can leave that piece that comes straight up towards the viewer a little bit and maybe tease it out the other direction.
yeah.
But
I think
hey,
the drip line. I think the drip line is it's playing with us because this tree's in development. I
Yeah.
highly doubt he's going to keep that.
And we don't
Keep
know what kind
the
of pot it's going to end up in either.
right, right.
Uh,
But it is a beautiful tree, and like you say, he's done a great job. Um, with the design itself.
and okay, so we'll move on to the bonsai word of the week. Just really quick, and then we'll be wrapping up. But just to kind of say it real quick, it's Yoshi Yi or Yoshi Yu, I think. I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but Yose space UE. And I wanted to use this bonsai word of the week because it kind of does kind of match up to some projects that we have visited in the past and like to talk about with bald cypresses. That word stands for forest planting.
Okay.
And just to drop that in there. Usually we elaborate on these bonsai words of the week, but I feel like forest plantings are so broad that we could really go on forever about forest plantings. But we'll have to do a revisit on it, Nate. But
What all have you seen, real quick? What all have you seen people do bald cypress with forest planting? You've done it on driftwood. You've seen it on slabs, obviously in a pot.
so far, I've done bald cypresses on driftwoods. I've done it on a piece of blue flagstone. I saw somebody do this big lava rock kind of crater looking thing. You could see it. I think it's at the National Arboretum. I've seen quite a few different takes on the flat top cypress forest plantings that are really beautiful in really shallow containers. But I would love to see a lot more cypresses on flat stones. I know it doesn't seem like something that they naturally would do, but yeah, the flagstone that I put that tree ghoul on represents water as opposed to stone. So the flatter the better. So yeah, I think there's more experimentation to be done. But like I said, we're gonna wrap up this episode, Nate. I'm sorry, I gotta cut you short a little bit, buddy, but we can come back and talk about flat top forests on the next one. Maybe we can get Carmen and Mike on here too.
Yep, certainly. Well, buddy, it's good to hear from you again.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out, Nate. I'll be talking to you really soon. We need to catch up and get the first flush on your bald cypresses that we worked on recently dialed in.
Yep, but certainly.
All right, dude. Thanks for hanging out. I'll talk to you next time.
No doubt. See you guys.